Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what I'm going to do for you is recap the Livest homecoming in America. That's right. I'm talking about none other than the homecoming celebration for one of the premier HBCUs in the country, my beloved alma mater, South Carolina State University. At the time of this recording, it is now Monday following the homecoming festivities this past weekend. And when I tell you that I am tired, but my heart and soul is full, that may be an understatement. Like I said, this past weekend, got a chance to go back to the Garden City of Orangeburg, South Carolina, and visit my alma mater, South Carolina State University. Our motto, and we've had this, and this past weekend, we've truly lived up to our motto, the livest homecoming in America. It was indeed live. I will implore all of you, if you've ever been to a homecoming for an HBCU, everybody does it a little bit different. Not saying that one is better than the other, because we all have our little nicknames and mottos and things of that nature, and that's cool. But do yourself a favor. In the coming years, make your way to Orangeburg, South Carolina, to attend South Carolina State University's homecoming. If you want to see a live homecoming, if you want to participate in all of its glory and activities, indeed, do yourself a favor. Please, ma'am, please, sir, and come to Orangeburg. As I mentioned, I'm an alum. If you know, you also know that my wife, Sharice, is also an alum as well. That's where we met. So this past Friday, we made the trip from Atlanta down to Orangeburg, which is about a 3.5 hour drive. And it's always interesting because when we make the plan to go to homecoming, it's so much stuff involved. And I know, like, for her, it was a case of trying to find the right outfits, because this year was a little different from previous years, because this year we knew it was going to be hot. Now, here's the thing. Global warming is real, and you rarely get, high 80, almost 90 degree days in South Carolina in October, in late October nonetheless. But this past weekend was the exception. We knew on Friday it was going to be 84 degrees. Saturday, the day of the homecoming game, it was going to be 89 degrees. And given the fact that, like I said, I went to school there, and I just understand how the weather in Orangeburg is, they can tell you that it's going to be 89 degrees, but that really means it's going to be like 93. So you have to pack light. So this is the first time in years that I can ever remember going to homecoming and wearing shorts. Like, I packed a couple of pairs of shorts. I knew that in typical fashion, the weather in Orangeburg was going to change on Sunday. So you went from t-shirts and shorts on Friday. Well, actually Thursday. We didn't get there till Friday, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then on Sunday, it was like 69 degrees. So you went from shorts to hoodies within a matter of a couple of hours. Nonetheless, we were happy to make the trip down. We didn't bring any of the kids. But it's always a good time, and it's always good for us because even in our conversations and the drive, you know, we do it a lot, but we get a chance to reflect and reminisce just over our time there. Some of the people that we met, what we've learned, and how we've grown as young adults and now grown people. Um, so we get on campus, and when you get on campus, for us and a lot of my friends, like the first stop is the bookstore. The bookstore is where you can get your gear. A lot of people buy stuff online. A lot of people wait until they come to the university and stop by the bookstore to get some gear for the weekend or whatever. All the college paraphernalia. If you're in a Greek fraternity or sorority, a lot of people get a lot of their stuff there as well. I'm not, but my wife is. Um, but it's always good to stop by the bookstore. Personally, I wanted to stop by the bookstore just to see what they had in there, but I had my own gear. I posted quite a few pictures on social media. If you follow me on social media, you'll see. But the T-shirt that I was wearing, along with the T-shirt that I have on right now, if you're watching, thank you for watching on YouTube. These shirts were custom made by the one and only Baylor the Great. You know him. That's my boy, my brother from LA. He has a podcast or two podcasts, Open Run with BTG and BTG for President. Well, Baylor makes merch, and he was able to make this shirt that I'm wearing, as well as the one that I wore on Saturday, as well as the hoodie that I had on Sunday. So if you see me in some pictures and you see the old, this is what we call the old Bulldog logo. The throwback logo. And if you're interested, particularly if you're an alum and you're interested, shoot me a message. I'll give you his information. And he does great work. This is not the first time that he's made merchandise for me, but I had to get something specific for homecoming, and I can't tell you how many people asked about it. People loved it, both the T-shirt and the hoodie. So definitely check in with my man BTG. So yeah, we get on campus. Campus is cool. It's there's always a vibe, and I've spoken about this before, and it's worth repeating. Like, there's a vibe on our campus, and there's a feeling that you get when you get on campus. Like, for me, there's a level of anticipation up until the moment that you get on campus, and when you get on campus, there is such a magical feeling. It is a place where you really and truly feel like home. For me, it's a place that I literally and figuratively grew up. I will not be who I am today had it not been for my time at South Carolina State University. There's no way that you would be listening to or seeing me as I exist right now, and I owe that to the university. Um, so yeah, it was good just to get on campus and get that feeling of being on the yard, which is what we call it, the yard, because our school mascot is a bulldog. So we were back on the yard, and one of the first places we went was we wanted to catch up with our homeboy Howard. Howard is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. So we went check out the Noops, saw a couple of my old teammates over there, and saw a couple of people. And I keep in mind, it's probably about 3:30, 4 o'clock on Friday, right? And they were drunk already. So, and that's another thing that I will always impress upon people. When it comes to homecoming, a word to the wise: pace yourself. It's a long weekend, but it's a lot going on, and it's condensed in a certain amount of time, and you have to pace yourself. Um, whether that be eating, drinking, or whatever, or lack of sleep, whatever you're doing, pace yourself, because you're going to need it, right? And you're doing things that you're not normally doing as far as part of your everyday routine. So we did that. We went and checked into the hotel, came back on campus. And when we got back on campus, we went to the day party. The day party was thrown by the brothers of Omega Psi Phi Incorporated, Fraternity Incorporated, excuse me. I don't want to be corrected by the Qs, even though my partner's a Qs. And the day party was crazy. Shout out to the homie DJ Skills, who was on the ones and twos. I didn't get a chance to see Skills. I heard Skills obviously on the ones and twos, but I didn't get a chance to check him. That's one of the homies from back home in Florence. But it was crazy. I mean, like, they had tents set up. Under the tents were tables. You could get like VIP tables. Of course, there was a lot of liquor and stuff that you could get. Water was my beverage of choice this weekend. I wasn't about to get out there and pass out because I had too much alcohol. So that was cool. One of the beautiful things about going to the day party, or any party for that matter, is that you're going to run into people. And one of the first people that I ran into was one of my best friends from school. We came in, we've been tight since our freshman year, my homegirl, Crystal. And she comes running up to me, gives this big hug. And I've talked about Crystal in previous episodes. Crystal and I always see each other during homecoming. And we always say, hey, we got to catch up. And we never catch up. But it was great seeing Crystal. She looked great. And I told her, I said, man, we got to catch up. We have to catch up. So I thought that I would see Crystal later on that night. I ain't see Crystal no more the rest of the weekend. And it's just like that. One of the main things that I will say that I took away from homecoming is you have to understand, when you see someone, that's probably unless you're rolling with them, that is probably the only time that you're going to see them the entire weekend. Orangeburg, relatively speaking, is not a big place, right? Our school, just to give you some context, when I was in school, I think we may have had 6,000, maybe 6,500 students, right? But homecoming itself, you'd probably have about 60,000 people on the campus. And again, you got 23,000 in the stadium because that's the max capacity. The game is sold out, but the tailgate area and just all around the campus, you probably have another, give or take, 30, 40,000 on campus. I mean, it's just that many people. So unless there's somebody that's actually rolling with you, odds are likely if you see them once, unless you're intentional, you probably won't see them again unless you're just rolling with them. And of course, Friday, finally, once I got to the day party, I saw my man Mo. Y'all know Mo has been on here. That's one of my best friends, my teammate, my dog, right? So you'll always see, I tell people all the time, like, you always see me and Mo together. Like, people will see Mo and ask where I am. They don't ask where his wife is. And his wife went to school with us too. Same for me. They won't ask where my wife is. They'll say, well, where's Mo? Because we're always together. Mo's a member of Omega Psi Phi as well. So hung out with him for a brief second on Friday, and then he disappeared. And, just stayed out there at the day party. The day party lasted from like 4 to like 10. I mean, like, it was ongoing the entire time, and we just had a ball, man. It was just good walking around, seeing people, having conversations. I was really happy to see Sharice link up with some of her friends from her freshman year. Like, it was interesting because I met Sharice when she was a freshman, and her whole squad, like, they were like 11 deep. And so they might have been about 15 deep. And, that's kind of typical for girls at that age, freshman year, whatever like that. And then, as the years go by, the numbers dwindle or whatever like that. But she saw some of her freshman crew that she hadn't seen probably in about 20 years. So I was really happy for her because I know those relationships mean a lot to her. So that was good to see. It was good for me to see some of my people that I came into school with, and it's always good to see, smiling faces. And I always maintain, like, at least from my experience at South Carolina State University, is that's the one place where in my life where you really and truly had platonic male-female relationships, and there was like no interest or whatever like that as far as sexuals was concerned. I mean, you had people that you got with or whatever like that. Not me, but but you get my point. Like, particularly when I look back over my college years, like I have and really had a lot of female friends who were just genuine friends. And I think, college, at least for us, and the people that I went to school with, and there are a lot of people that can say this, like it was just genuine love and just genuine friendships. It wasn't anything romantic or anything like that. You weren't trying to get with them. Even like Crystal, I mentioned, like I was never interested in Crystal. She was always a beautiful young lady, but we were like this. We were like close from day one. So, um, but I think that's always an interesting dynamic, particularly on an HBCU campus. Um, so that was Friday. Friday was crazy. I was toward the end of the night Friday, as I wrapped up. There was another party, a blackout party, after party, if you will, and a couple of people said, "Hey, are you going to the after party?" No. No, this day party was enough for me because the day party went into the night and I wanted to get back to my hotel and finish watching the World Series, which featured the Los Angeles Dodgers and my New York Yankees. So that was that. We got up Saturday morning, had breakfast, and with my man Howard and his wife. Shout out to his wife Sandra. Met her for the first time. Really, really sweet. And so the four of us had breakfast, and then it was, time to get to campus. Now there's a huge homecoming day parade. In years past, we would go to the homecoming parade, but honestly, your attendance at the homecoming parade really depends on how live your Friday night was. If your Friday night was live, you probably weren't going to make it. I'm gonna just be honest. If your Friday night wasn't that live, then you probably could make it. My Friday night wasn't that well. Actually, no, I take that back. My Friday night was pretty live. So, I knew I wasn't going to the parade. I would have liked to have gone to the parade, but I wasn't getting up that early to go to the parade. But ultimately, you want to get on campus because as you get on campus, things are kind of popping off or whatever like that, and you want to beat the rush of traffic. Now, the thing that has worked for us the last couple of years is that the actual football game started at 3:30. So in years past, our games would start at 1:00. Homecoming game starts at 3:30. So that gives you time. And I mean, like in the years that the game was at 1:00, you literally would go from, and that was the reason why a lot of us, we went to the parade because you'd go watch the parade and then you go to the stadium for the game. Now you don't have to do that as much. You can kind of sleep in or do whatever you got to do in the morning, any running around. If you got to go get some gear or whatever, you got to go to the bookstore, whatever the case may be. Or if you want to kind of move around the campus, because there's vendors everywhere, food vendors, there's clothing vendors, there's a multitude of places where you can buy stuff, SC State paraphernalia, right? So you want to do all of that stuff before you go into the game. And so with the game starting at 3:30, it was perfect. Now for me, I wanted to get on campus. And I wanted to get on campus because there's always an anticipation for me when you get on campus. And I will explain to you what that anticipation is and what the ritual is for me personally. But first, we got to take a quick commercial break. And on the other side, I'll explain my Saturday at homecoming. Sit tight. We'll be back in just a second. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes. And just like that, we are back. Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle. This is the 12 Kyle podcast, and we are recapping Homecoming 2024 on the campus of South Carolina State University. As I mentioned before the break, there's a ritual. There's a thing that I would do back in the day. And I haven't done it in years, but what I did was when I came on campus, it was interesting because Sharice got out of the car and she hopped on a golf cart with one of her girlfriends. And I didn't see Sharice again until like, I don't know, 9 o'clock Saturday night. And that's one of the things that we do. Like, even though we've gone to school together and we share mutual friends. I mean, she has her friends. I have my friends. I have my former teammates. She has her sorority sisters. So we're not one of those couples that are like up under each other. In fact, there's always, we always kind of quote unquote compare notes because she'll say, "Hey, did you see Sharon?" And I'll say, "No, I didn't see." She was like, "Well, Sharon asked about you." And it's like we'll see people and they'll ask where the other one is. And we have our own friends and we have our different, experiences and stuff like that. So we're never, I don't want y'all to think we're not together because we are together, but we have our space. And then I know like for the game, we know this big from years past. She wants to go to the game with her sorority sisters so they can stand up, they do their little things or whatever. Personally, for me, I want to actually watch the game. I'm one of the few people who go to the homecoming game because as a former player, I want to actually see how good this football team is. I'm thoroughly interested in the game. But what I wanted to do is do something a little different. I told myself this year that, Kyle, take pictures. And that's something that I hadn't really done in years past. And it's not for any particular reason. I just like when you're in the moment, you don't think about taking a bunch of pictures. So as soon as I got on campus, I started taking pictures. Started taking pictures of some of the buildings, some of the dorms, some of the places, some of the memories that I've had. Not necessarily for a podcast or to post it online, but to just as a subtle reminder of these little parts of the university that help make me. For instance, I took a picture of the library, and then I took a picture of me standing I had someone take a picture of me standing in front of the library. Now, I could tell you that I spent countless hours in the library, honing my craft, studying, writing, perfecting my soon-to-be podcast voice. But that'd be a damn lie. I did spend a little bit of time in the library, but I didn't spend as much time. And it's funny because before I took the picture in front of the library, I was like, I don't really know how much time I spent here. It wasn't a lot. And well, I'll put it like this. When I did go to the library, it wasn't to study. It was to meet somebody or to get some notes or something like that. It was never, hey, I'm going in here for research, or hey, I'm going here to get a book that I need to get so I can read. And don't get me wrong, I got my work done, but I wasn't in the library like that. But I wanted to be, really, I wanted to be nostalgic, as far as my experiences. So I was walking and I took pictures of some of the buildings. And as I was walking toward the stadium, I got butterflies, right? And because there's a view, if you walk past Mitchell Hall, which is where the dorm where I lived, you walk past Mitchell Hall and you're walking forward, the stadium is right there. And so you see in big block letters, Oliver C. Dawson Stadium. And I got butterflies because that's the walk that I took so many years, headed to the stadium to get ready to play. And instead of, when I got in front of the stadium, instead of going left to where, what was interesting is as you're walking down the sidewalk, everything's going on. And I talked about this a little bit on the game day episode. There's an episode that I have called Game Day, where I give you the game day experience from my perspective. And you're walking down and you hear music coming from everywhere. You smell the grills and everything. You see people out and about. People are waving. It is such a great vibe. I really wish I could take that vibe, put it in a bottle, and sell it. It would be a bestseller. Trust me. But anyway, so as I'm walking, I get in front of the stadium, and instead of going left, I go right. If you go right, you're headed towards the back side of the stadium, which is where the team locker room is, but there's also a access gate to the field. And I was like, you know what? I'll just go over here and walk by the field. And so I walked to the field, and there was a security gate, and there was a young lady who was manning the gate. The security gate was open, but she was standing there. And I walked up, and she said, and I didn't. Now keep in mind, I don't have on. I just have on I look like a fan, I guess. But I don't have a badge on, an access badge or anything like that. And she says, this young lady, she can't be no more than 25, 26 years old. And she basically old enough to be my daughter. And so she says, well, who are you? I said, I'm Kyle. Nice to meet you. And I stick out my hand. And she said, well, are you going on the field? She was like, because I don't see a pass. I was like, no, I said, I was just going to stay in here and just take it in. I was like, I could go on the field. I was like, but I'm just going to stay in here and take it in. And so I started a conversation with her, just talking at her. I was just watching the players. Again, it's pregame, so nothing's going on. There's a couple of players out there warming up and everything. And then one of my teammates come up, my man Calvin, and he comes up with his son. Calvin's on the field with his son. And I can't remember how Calvin got on the field, but I guess maybe he walked in too. I don't know. But, I know how to get around our stadium. And I also know that when you walk into places, if you act as if you're supposed to be there, nobody's ever going to question you. And I walked up like I was supposed to be there, even though I didn't have any type of security clearance to be on the field. And I wasn't tripping. I was really just going to stand there and just kind of take it in. But when the Calvin came up and I talked to him, she was like, oh, well, you can go ahead. She was like, I think you'll be fine. And I was like, yeah, I said, I'm not gonna get you in any trouble. I said, just want to walk on the field. I said, take a couple of pictures. I said, and I'll be back. And she was like, okay, cool. And so I did, Calvin and I talked a little bit, played with his son. And I did something that I had not done probably, I can't remember. It's probably been at least 10 years since I've done it. And I've never done it on game day since I graduated. But I started at one end of the end zone and I walked the entire field. I walked from one end zone to the other end zone, right? And as I walked, I thought about me. I thought about my time at South Carolina State University. I thought about how I got there. I thought about all of the people who were instrumental in helping me get there. I thought about all of the people who were instrumental in me graduating from there. I thought about all of the people that I met there in this walk. And this walk took 2 minutes, but I was so thankful. And there was a breeze that came through, even though it was 89 degrees that day. And it just reminded me that how special that time was. It reminded me of how special the school is. It reminded me of how special the people that I've come in contact with are. It reminded me of how special the alumni are. It reminded me of how special the person that I met there and fell in love with, the friends that I met, the teammates that I had. It reminded me of the experiences that I had on that single field that particular day. I've made that walk before. And this time it was a whole lot different because I see it through the eyes of a 51-year-old man as opposed to a 20-year-old kid, which is what I was probably the last time I made that walk. And it was exhilarating. It was fantastic. It was probably the coolest 2 minutes I spent all weekend. And I looked up in the stands and I could see, fans starting to file in and everything as I heard players warming up, and it just brought back so many memories. And it felt like I was there again in that space as a 19, 20, 21-year-old man. And I was just thankful. I was thankful because I don't know necessarily that a lot of people could have gone through some of the things that I went through and still been where I am today. Um, and I was thankful. I was truly, truly thankful. And so I took a couple of pictures, and actually, I took quite a few pictures and stayed on the field for a while, and then walked off the field. Went back and said, thanks to the young lady, and I went back around the stadium, and it was time for me to get my game day experience on. I had previously hit up the homie Danny Foxworth. Shout out to Danny. We had told each other that we were going to, because we officially met last year at last year's homecoming, but we didn't go to the game together. And I said, well, hey, if you ain't doing that, man, we can go watch the game together. He's like, all right, bet. Y'all know Danny. Danny has a podcast. Actually, Danny's got 3 podcasts. He's actually been on this podcast before. But good brother, man. Danny's from Moncks Corner, South Carolina, which is probably about an hour away from Orangeburg, and he made the drive up to come kick it with. He said he was going to be able to be at the game the entire game. But it was good, man. I met him in front of the basketball arena, man. We chopped it up, reminisced, laughed, talked about podcasting, because his journey in podcasting, he said, was inspired by me, and that made me feel good because. I remember Danny reaching out to me on Twitter about starting his podcast, and I think he's right at 150 episodes now. And he's got 3 podcasts going now, and he's cranking them out. And I listen. And like I said, good brother, man. I thoroughly enjoyed our time together. We actually went into the stadium and watched the game together. And my homeboy Stahl came in town. Stahl is not an alum, but he once coached at South Carolina State University, and I had Stahl on the podcast probably about a year and a half ago when he was with the Falcons, and his wife is an alum, and so it was good having 2 of my boys sitting there with me. We'd seen some of my teammates and everything, and it was just good to be in the game. Now, speaking of the game, the homecoming game really wasn't that much to talk about, other than our dominance on the field. South Carolina State ends up winning the game 69-35 over Delaware State. To say the game wasn't competitive, it is an understatement. And it's interesting because Delaware State, at least from my days in college, some 20 plus years ago, almost 30 years ago, Delaware State was always a tough team to play. They were tough to beat. This version of Delaware State isn't that good. And so, like the first play, we had a receiver catch like a 5-yard pass, and it turned into like a 75-yard touchdown. Like, it was just that type of day. I think we had, at some point in the first half, we were up like 42-14 or something like that. So the game was pretty much decided like in the first quarter. So I was just like, hey, I'm going to stick around until halftime, and then I'm going to bounce. And Danny actually left before halftime. So he did not get a chance to see our famous band, the Marching 101. But I did. And, but it was good. Like I said, hanging out with him, man, and God willing, we'll do it again next year. But the game, like I said, was, it was, well, here's the thing. I'm not a big fan of blowouts, but I wanted to see our team play. And I was impressed with what we did. I think, there's some things that we could work on as a team, but I was happy. A win is a win, right? I'm always happy with a win. While it wasn't as competitive as last year's homecoming game against Howard, which we won. Shout out to Heather Marie. But, we won, so that's all that matters. At least to me. And I think we got out relatively easy as far as like health and everything. We didn't get anybody hurt. But like I said, I wanted to make sure that I took pictures. I wanted to make sure that I had a nostalgic, feeling as to being back on campus. I felt great taking the walk down the field. And I got a chance to, like I said, hang out with 2 of my boys at the game. So I leave the game at halftime. I'm like, all right, at this point, I got to get some water because I had a towel over my head and I had my shades on, and it's cooking. My watch said it was 90 degrees, but it was sitting in the stands, probably about 90, 95. So I leave the game, go to one of my teammates' tailgates. We're over there eating and drinking, and I think I hit like maybe 3 bottles of water. I just down those. And then my cousin called me, my cousin Eric. And he's like, yo, he's like, where are you? I was like, I'm in front of the ticket office. He was like, hey, I'm up in the press box. And he told me that my uncle is up there. Our uncle is up there. And I'm like, I'm surprised because I didn't even know my uncle had come into town. My uncle is Harry Carson, member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, New York Giant for 13 years. He too is an alum from South Carolina State, class of 1976. So I didn't know he was in town. So Eric told me he was there. He was like, come back in the stadium. I'm in the press box. I'll come down and I'll bring you up. And so did just that, went back in the stadium, and I go up to the press box, and, you know, I've been up there before because I used to, part of my intern, I actually worked in the, I worked as a spotter for the public address announcer back when I was in college. And so I go into the presidential, so there's suites and stuff. There's a couple of different rooms. There's rooms for coaches and stuff, but then there's also the presidential suite. And I go into the presidential suite, and they've got the seats and stuff set up kind of like stadium seating. And then there's a suite where you have food and stuff. And my uncle's in there. So we dap up and start talking and chopping it up. And then I look over my left shoulder, and lo and behold, it's my guy, my coach, Coach Willie Jeffries, which is interesting because Coach Jeffries, we call him Coach J. Coach J actually coached my uncle as well. I mentioned that on this podcast before. Coach J coached me and my uncle. And Coach J, I want to say, is 87, I think. And so I walk over to him, give him a pound and a hug. And it was great seeing him. And he, in typical Coach J fashion, had some jokes. I tell people all the time, Coach J, probably outside of Richard Pryor, is one of the funniest people ever to walk this face of the earth. He has a story and he has a joke about everything. And one of the things that I love about Coach J, even at his age now, he's still mentally sharp. Like I heard him talking to my uncle about some game that they played in 1972. And he was like, you remember the guy came around the corner on 3rd down and 10 and we hit him and we did such, I mean, like, it's mind boggling to me that you could remember something literally that far away and at that advanced age. And I could barely remember what I had for lunch yesterday. Right. So it was good to, you know, sit down and kick it with Coach J. We talked for probably about 15 minutes or so. By this time, the game is out of hand, and the game, for whatever reason, the game ran long. The game was probably about 3.5 hours long, which is way too long for a college football game. It was close to 4-hour game. I guess they were throwing the ball around. I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't watching. And also got a chance to meet the president of the university. Really nice guy. We talked a little bit as well. And my cousin Eric introduced us. And President Kanye, shout out to you. I think you're doing a great job at the university. And I am willing to help in any way that I can. I will send $1 or $2. I may have to borrow the $1 or $2, but I will send $1 or $2 to the Alumni Association. So yeah, kicking it with my uncle, kicking with Coach J, kicking it with the president of the university. It was dope. It was dope. And then I left the press box. I went back to the tailgate and partied a little bit more. Went over to the the tailgate where the Omegas were, and they had this huge area blocked off on the practice field, and they had tents and tables and drinks and everything and music. I mean, you couldn't ask for much more. And I just partied out there and just seeing people, seeing old teammates, sharing stories, sharing lies. It was a great time, man. I can't even put into words really about what it was. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, my heart and my soul are full. In conclusion, I can't express enough how much the university means to me. I will employ any alum, if you're considering coming to homecoming, please do so. Now, what happened at the homecoming game, which blew me away, was they actually announced when homecoming is next year, which is something they rarely do. I don't know that it's ever happened. Normally you find out after the season is over because the schedules are done or whatever. Well, the schedules are done and they've already set the game. So next year, homecoming will be the first weekend of October. I think it's October 3rd through the 5th, right? 2025. So heads up. You and you and you and you are all welcome to attend. Come on, come to Orangeburg, come party with me, come kick it with me, come have a good time. I will tell you this, pack light, because it was rare for us to get upper 80-degree weather at the end of October. The first weekend of October is still in the 90s. So I know for a fact next year, without even thinking about it, it's going to be hot. So we're going to have to kind of rinse and repeat and do what we did this year. Hydrate. I saw quite a few kids. Well, not kids. I saw quite a few people passed out because of the heat. Liquor and heat don't mix. I saw one little girl. She was a college student. I know she had to be a college student. And she was leaning on the fence and she tapped her head, and the next thing I know, she was throwing up right there on the field, on the practice field by the fence. Which wasn't a good look amongst, 30,000 people. But, it had to come out of her. But you got to pace yourself. Again, and she learned the lesson. Liquor and heat don't mix. But nonetheless, again, all of you are invited. I would love for you guys to meet me there. Don't meet me there, beat me there, as they say. But I'm looking forward to it already. Hotel is already booked, and hopefully there'll be more people to come. I always love seeing my teammates. I always love seeing my classmates. There's a bunch of people that I ran into this weekend that I hugged, that I took pictures with, that I dapped up. I could name you all, but that would make a 7-hour podcast, and we ain't got that kind of time. But I want to thank you all for checking out and listening to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. You can find this podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Wherever you get your podcasts, that's where we are. Subscribe. If you're on YouTube, we're on YouTube. Go to YouTube, subscribe there. The great thing about our YouTube channel is that we have both audio and video of all of our episodes. If you're on social media, hit me up. 12 Kyle podcast across the board. That goes for Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. Also, if you'd like to contribute financially, we will take it. If you look in the description box, there's a link that says merch. Click that link and you can get 12 Kyle podcast hoodies, t-shirts, as well as coffee mugs like this one right here that I'm showing on YouTube. Also, you can hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Again, that's going to do it for me. Again, shout out to every Bulldog, every alum, everybody that attended the livest homecoming in America at South Carolina State University. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.